Hey everyone, my name is David Justice, co-founder of The Young Merchant, where we're creating informative, enticing content for young entrepreneurs and go-getters. Today we have another great interview lined up with a three-time published author, founder of J. Harris Publishing, LLC, PG County, Maryland's 40 under 40 winner. And he's doing a lot more than that, but we're super pumped to have him on here to just inspire the youth and young people coming up that want to accomplish many things. So John, we appreciate your time. I know if you want to give everybody a formal introduction about yourself and your story.
Thank you. First and foremost, just really grateful to be a part of this amazing show. I'm truly honored. Again, I'm Jonathan Harris. I am originally from Fort Washington, Maryland, which is about 10 minutes from DC and Maryland, Virginia, if you've ever been down that way. Growing up, I was raised by my mom and dad who, served a big influence over the course of my life, helped me become the man that I am. Professionally, I work at the first degree granting historically Black university, Lincoln University. And outside of that, I am also, as you mentioned, a three-time published author. I'm a motivational speaker. Actually had an opportunity to give a TEDx talk back in January of last year. And I've also gotten into some coaching in the sense of life coaching, productivity coaching, and even about to open up a component of health coaching. I lost over 100 pounds. And I've had a lot of people hitting me up interested in working with me on how I did it. So stay tuned for that.
Well, you're doing a lot of great things. The first thing I want to start off is first, I noticed you're in a bunch of different avenues, but everything lines up to, I believe, your core values on helping the youth and other people, come up of different backgrounds, specifically male as well. And I just wanted to figure out, if you could express to the audience, is there anything that comes from, your core values? Is there anything that, maybe personal, that drives you for these different avenues?
So I'd say early on, it really started when I was about, I'd say anywhere between 8 and 10 years old. So my father actually worked at a high school that was in a little bit of a rough area. And, just growing up, I always saw him doing for other people. I never understood when I was a kid, but he was always taking food to the school, clothes that didn't fit anymore, just different things like that. So my introduction into service and giving back started at such an early age. I actually spent several summers up there with him at the school, just kind of helping out or just hanging out. And that's when I really fell in love with the field of education because I realized the powerful impact that you can have on a young person's life by just really being visible. I think the biggest thing with kids is they just want your time. They just want somebody who's willing to listen and to show them that they genuinely care. And the rest kind of really just works itself out. I think after you can build a strong relationship filled with trust with a student, it grows from there. They come to you about bigger issues, whether that's relationship, mental health, even career aspirations, and the conversations you're able to have are just so much better over time. So from there, now working at Lincoln and have been for the last 8 years, the platform that I've built has been based on letting students know that I am there for them. So, my students follow me on Instagram. They text me, call me, email, and it's really what their preference is. I definitely understand the importance of boundaries and do my best to set them as well. But I realize that with students, they are very unconventional in their needs. So you have to be unconventional in your methods to reach out to them.
I see. I try to be, maybe I'm one of those people that need to be on social media a little less, but I follow what you've been doing. And it seems like even from your students, the people in the community, I don't know if everybody on there is from Lincoln, but they seem like they enjoy themselves. They love what they're doing. And I think that's another thing too. I feel like growing up, whether it's church or, your neighbors, a lot of times your parents make you do these things. And sometimes, doing something for free or, going out your way wasn't fun. And I feel like, your audience are embracing that not only is it good to do it, but it's fun, it's meaningful. And that's the bigger picture in life, So I commend you for creating that, that vibe and that movement. One thing we're looking to do on this, just this page is what we're looking to do is encourage people to give them information in different industries. A lot of in life, we're taught that we have to go certain avenues. And I'm not one of the people that say college is not good. I'm not one to say that you got to be a hustler. I believe in that there's multiple avenues and you need to find what your purpose is on earth. And once you find that out early, then it makes everything easier. And what we're looking to do is talk to people from different backgrounds, different industries that really want to give back and help the next generation have an advantage that we might not have had. So you're definitely in the creative, in the community. Now you're in health. Really start. I don't know if you started out in being an author. So I really wanted to start there. Is ask for any inspiring authors. What would you say the first step is, to bringing out that creativity, and how do you get a book published?
Wow, those are really good questions, actually. And it's so funny because growing up, I had no desire to be an author whatsoever, right? I always envisioned that my life would have some other goals, but being an author was never one of them. It started from having car troubles. And, I ended up putting my car in the shop. I filled out the maintenance form incorrectly because I had a flat tire. I told the maintenance man that I needed a tune up. And for those of you who are watching this show, a tune up deals with fixing the wiring. It has absolutely nothing to do with fixing a tire. So, long story short, I paid about $200 extra for an unnecessary repair, essentially. And in that moment, my dad was asking me why didn't I just call and ask him for help. And at the time, I was 24 years old, so I'm kind of in that grown man mindset, or so I thought. That I'm grown, I don't need any help, I got it. And the truth is, I didn't have it. So as a result, again, I paid an unnecessary amount of money, and it was a very kind of real humbling check to say, wow, if I had just picked up the phone and asked somebody who knew more about the subject than I did, I wouldn't have found myself in that situation. And I think as guys, especially, a lot of us are so prideful that we find ourselves in an even worse situation because we don't want to admit that it is over our heads at this point and we need help. Now, luckily, like I said, for me, it was just car troubles and it was $200, but that can translate to some really big, dangerous situations when you don't ask for help. So in that moment, I said, well, I have a dad, I have a brother, I have a grandfather, and all of these other males, and even some great women who could have helped me with this. And even I fell victim to it. So what happens to guys who don't have a dad that they can call? What happens to the guys who don't have a big brother, a mentor, an uncle, a former teacher, or whomever? And at that moment, it just really, God spoke to my spirit and said, like, you need to create some type of resource guide for guys. Obviously, a book will never take the place of anyone's parent, but I think that it's a great resource for people who might have questions about how to cook, and live on their own in an apartment, how to date and be in a healthy relationship, how to travel out of town by yourself, how to write a check, right? All of these different life skills. And that's essentially how my footing got started with the author endeavor. Interestingly enough, if I could go back and have a conversation with 24-year-old me when I first started writing the first book, I would have told myself to definitely get a business mentor. And the reason I say that is because no one really explained to me that when you release a book, you are also starting a business at the same time. So I really went into it with a spirit to just want to help people with essentially helpful hints. So I'm like, I'm going to take all of these different resources and put it in a book and send it out. When I first released my book and they're sending me like tax information, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm like, well, what are you sending me this for? I'm not thinking about the business element to what I just stepped into. I'm really just focusing on wanting to help. So, essentially, I had to shift my whole mind to become a businessman to actually make the book work. As an author, we're so prideful in what we wrote. We're proud, but there's a business element behind making a person even want to buy what you wrote. And that was completely just oblivious to me. I'm like, I'm not even thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
So at that point, now I'm the web developer because I have to build my own website. I'm the graphic designer because I'm making my flyers for my appearances. I'm the booking agent and tour coordinator because I have to set up these appearances and anything involving a contract and all of these different jobs. I'm the accountant, making sure I'm keeping accurate records of what I'm spending and what I'm making and all of this stuff. So if I could go back to 24-year-old me, regardless of what genre of book you want to write, I would really tell you to find somebody who is well versed in the world of business to help you with the business side of what it is you're about to do. In terms of the writing piece, I would just encourage everyone to be intentional about every single word, every single sentence. A lot of times we write because we think that it's good, for just saying it. But then you have to then go back and say, how does this relate to the purpose of the book? So mine's was a men's self-help book for young men. So certain paragraphs, even though it felt great to write, the person editing my book had to say, well, how does this speak to the overall purpose of the book? And I'm like, well, it doesn't. Then the answer is it's got to come back out of the book. So, regardless of what genre you're writing, just make sure that everything is still a part of the greater purpose of your book. And that would honestly be my advice to anyone who's looking to publish their first book.
I would say that was good information for me. So I know that will help. That will help a bunch of people watching this. I just feel like that is a good advice. I feel like in any industry, especially creative industries, whether you're a painter or a singer, a lot of times I do feel like people are not everything for the money. They want to give back, and they think it'll help somebody, but they don't think about the business side of it. If they do get that traction, what's going to happen right after that. So I think that was really good advice. As far as you talked about speaking, I think it would really help for other, any industry. I think for publicity, for getting your book out there, you have to make sure you speak to people, you talk to people, you have, interviews and different types of, publicity. What would you say, any advice or how that was, learning that, part of the business for, getting this type of, publicity?
So the fun part about I'll speak to it in two parts. I'll talk about getting the opportunities and then, having to perform when you have them. The biggest mistake that I made early on, I'm just a generally long-winded person. And as a professional who's constantly working to groom myself, I'm always checking yourself like, don't ramble, don't ramble. But when I first started in the game, I remember sending out these, oh my goodness, I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but the truth is the truth, right? Like 5 to 6 paragraph emails to people at all times of night because, generally speaking, I work a full-time job. So the evening is when I'm more so committed to the business.
Mm.
And the truth is, I had to start thinking like a seven-figure CEO and not like a person just starting out. And you have to think like the CEO of Walmart is not sending you emails at 2 in the morning. So you shouldn't be doing it either. And it's crazy as that sounds, you're like, but I'm not there yet. And with that mindset, you never will be, because ultimately speaking, the value that people place on you is really the value that you place on yourself. So if I approach you as an amateur, you will then give me the respect of an amateur, you will give me the pricing of an amateur, you will give me the treatment of an amateur. If I come to you as though I have my stuff together, even if behind the scenes I know that I don't, I'm more likely to then be treated better. And that's kind of where I went wrong early on, as I was reaching out to people at 3 in the morning. So while I'm just considering it to be this young, hungry, ambitious person, on the other side, they're like, look at this desperate kid looking to get a spot. And that was how it first started. So now I don't do any business when it comes to corresponding with other people after about 8 or 9 p.m. because I want to be taken seriously. Generally speaking, if I can do it before 5, even better. But I say all that to say like how I was approaching people. Also, too, a quick tidbit for those watching. Um, People are busy, and it's something to just keep in mind. When I first started, like I said, I used to send these long emails, and I will put what I wanted from you in the last email. And mind you, I'm sending these 5 to 6 paragraph long things. So if this were a regular paper, we're talking a page and a half to 2 pages of content in an email. Well, for those who work, think about all the emails that you get in a day. Are you about to sit there and read 2 pages when you have 40 other emails to get to? The answer is no. So I'm like, Jonathan, get to the point. So when I send emails now, my first paragraph covers exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a speaking opportunity. I'm looking to work with your kids. I'm looking to do this. And then the rest of the email, which is much shorter now, speaks to my qualifications, those types of things. But you can't bury that in the bottom. They've already tuned you out by then. So that's just a little nugget I wanted to drop with you all. When it comes to the actual opportunity itself, and working with students, the thing that I've found the most is they love activities, as opposed to just standing up there and talking. It's great if you can do some hands-on things. If it's a large audience, which I've done before, we're talking like the 500 to 1,000 plus. I've done things where you do like left side of the room versus loud side of the room. Who can make the most noise? It wakes them up. In smaller classrooms where we're looking at 30 and under students or 30 and under people, you know, I love reflective questions where I'll put a question out there and, I want to hear from 2 or 3 people to respond. It just lets you know that you are connected with them. Another great speaking thing as well. I was reading this in a book. However long you are given to speak, take 90% of that time and plan for it. So, for example, if you are contracted to speak for 1 hour, 90% of an hour is 54 minutes. So, plan for that amount of time. And the reason you're doing that, if you lose your place, if you start fidgeting over your words or anything happens, you don't cram an hour worth of material into an hour because now you're definitely going to go over. So you plan for a lot less. Let's say, for example, you ask a really good question and your audience is really engaged and everybody wants to answer. You sometimes don't plan for your audience being over engaged. And now you're like, wow, we've spent 20 minutes talking about this one question. I'm not even halfway done my presentation yet. So just again, being more time focused is something that I've really grown in over time. I just want to share that with everyone.
I like that 90%. I'm gonna make a note of that. That's actually really good advice because I feel like a lot of people. I mean, it applies to these interviews. It applies to a lot of different things. Is you have to plan for, not necessarily the worst, not necessarily not being able to control whatever it is. It's just the reality of it. A lot of things that are interactive don't go as planned most of the time,
Right.
and I think that it's smart to prepare to have less time so that it ends perfectly or a little bit, shorter than you want, and also allow you to be interactive with your audience. As far as, let me make sure I have it on here right to make sure. Yes. So you have 2 other books. I know Masters of Ceremonies, which I love that person. That one really hit home with me. But I noticed you have 2 other ones, and I know we started talking about the kids, is you have Girls with Pearls and Growing Gents. Was there any inspiration between those at all? Because I know you went from young males, and I think is that for a younger crowd? I want to make sure I'm saying it.
Yeah, so Growing Gents and Girls with Pearls are for the babies and the toddlers, and it's directly related to the first book. Believe it or not, when I was out on tour, I released my first book when I was 25, and I planned my own summer book tour. So I'm just out and about all these cities, like really trying to push this book. And the common theme amongst it, for those who bought Master of Ceremonies, they loved it. But there were a population of parents who had newborns or like really young kids. And with Master of Ceremonies, it speaks to kind of transitioning into adulthood. So, a 4-year-old is not, living on their own in some apartment cooking dinner. So the topics were a little bit not there yet for them. And a lot of the moms were saying, like, I wish you had something for younger kids. So at that point, I said, well, wow, what if I created some type of prequel to the first book where I talk to little kids about, how to be successful growing up, but how can we introduce that earlier? So with Growing Gents, every single topic in the book speaks to a different value system. It talks about being on time, actually talks about being early, talks about helping out around the house, talks about saying please and thank you, talks about saving money. So it introduces a lot of these concepts, but it introduces it in a way that would be age appropriate for, someone to read to their 2-year-old. Now, Girls with Pearls was inspired by Growing Gents because at that point, I've now created 2 concepts for men, and everybody was like, well, when are you going to do something for the ladies? So I said, I got you on my 3rd book, I promise you. So one day I'm in Red Lobster, I'm sitting down, I'm working on Girls with Pearls, and I asked my waitress, I said, well, let me ask you a question. What would you want your daughter to know by the time she turned 18 years old? Because one thing, being a man, I kind of felt uncomfortable writing a book for women and having no input from a woman. I think that would just be a really bad concept that would kind of work against me in the long run. So I'd asked the question to the waitress again, what would you like your daughter to learn by the time she's 18? And she gave me some really good answers like, I want my daughter to value her education. I want her to love herself. I want her to put her goals before, chasing a man and just different things like that. But what I didn't know is that she loved the question so much that she took it around to every single woman in Red Lobster and asked every woman the same question that I asked her. So she surprises me. She comes back to my table with this list of like all of the things that every woman in Red Lobster said. So essentially, the women of Red Lobster helped me with the content for my third book, which was so dope. It's just like every time I tell people that story, they're like, I can't
That's
believe
a
you wrote a
great
book in
story.
Red Lobster. But yeah, so it's been such a blessing. The thing that I like about being I guess you would say a children's book author is that I think there are so many more opportunities. You know, when you write a book for an older crowd, you know, you have the schools and the mentoring programs and the churches that you can work with. But as a children's book author, even last night, I was on an Instagram Live doing a read along on Instagram Live for the kids. So it was just really cool, like things that you don't really normally get to step into with children's books. You get newer opportunities. So this year, I'm actually excited. I want to work on some partnerships with daycare centers and be able to get the books in the daycares. And then, you know, when we get to a better place with COVID, actually then go into the daycares and do story time with the kids and have that conversation about the importance of, again, manners and being early and just being friendly. So that's been the blessing behind the children's books.
I think you talked about two really good things for entrepreneurs that a lot of people should know is two key things that I feel like what you've stated is that you need to one find your audience really quick on whatever you're
Mhm.
doing. You know, you as an author, you know, you can write like you said, you can write a great piece, but if it also depends on being a great piece, depending on who your audience is. You know, so I think that's really key. And also, I mean, just with the Red Lobster, there's a great example and with some of your previous, you know, customers was they gave you a problem they had, you know, or they gave you a want,
Yes.
you know, a desire, and you jumped on it and you made something better. You gave them something that they felt like they didn't have before. And I feel like for a lot of entrepreneurs, they need to realize that. I feel, you know, a lot of entrepreneurs, they, you know, they want to go get money. That's what they think right away. And they think, okay, I got to do what's trending, or I got to think, you know, I like this, so that'll make it good. The reality of it, I feel you need to find something where there's a gap or where there's something missing or a need, and then find the audience that wants that need filled. And I feel like that will launch a lot of people that want to, you know, their career or their product or their business to go up. So
Mhm.
I think that was really good advice. Um, as far as one other thing you talk about is with your mentorship program. I believe it's you're the head of Lincoln University's Males of Excellence. Am I saying that right?
So some kind of close. So our Instagram page is Males of LU. The technical name is the Office of Male Achievement.
Okay.
And pretty much that is our campus Mel initiative. I absolutely love it. It's such a it's so funny because everything in my life comes with a backstory, like literally everything. Um, I guess at this point, this would have been, and you're gonna trip out how it all comes together, right? So at this point, it would have been 5 years ago, right? So 2016. I was actually in the works with Lincoln University to get them to buy my books for the school. And I was meeting with the president of the university at the time for a book deal because, you know, I do work with men. I had a just had a men's book come out, so I'm like, why not, you know, intertwine them together? But at that point, there was no Lincoln University Mel Initiative. How it all actually came about is we had an opening for the vice president of student affairs position at the school. Our school president brought in his friend and longtime colleague to serve as our interim vice president of student affairs. So what happened is, in me being in the talks with getting a book deal with Lincoln, one day I get called down to the president's office, and I'm just like, that's not good. I don't know. It was like urgent. Like I got a call. Like you need to come to the president. I'm like, oh, like the president of a university. I'm like, okay. So I come down, and he's like, there's somebody I want you to meet. So he was like, I want to introduce you to Dr. Barry. So Dr. Barry was our interim vice president of student affairs. So then Dr. Barry, you know, is just getting started. So he's happy to meet me. We're connecting. Dr. Green, who was our president at the time, said, you know, I wanted you all to meet because Jonathan just wrote a book for young men, and Dr. Barry is interested in starting a male initiative. So Dr. Barry is like, yeah, I'm new here. I want your help with it. So we're working together on this Mel initiative. Now, get this. He started probably at the end of August. In the middle of October, he dies, like suddenly just dies. So now I'm like less than 2 months into helping somebody else do a Mel initiative, and the person whose idea it was and all of this just is now dead. So I'm heartbroken because Dr. Barry became like a mentor of mine overnight. And I was really excited and like really excited to help him bring his vision to life. And now he's not here. So I'm just like, where do we even go with this Mel initiative? And it was at the point like students weren't really getting on board with it at the time. Like I remember we had a meeting with like students. Students were like walking out in the middle of us like meeting and all of this stuff. So it's just like everything that could go wrong after this man died did go wrong to the point where I didn't even want to do it anymore. God spoke to me one day and he said, like, it's not that this is a bad idea, it's that you've gone about it the wrong way. Try it again. I promise you next school year will be different. So, fast forwarding, we're now in a new school year. God says, ask more people for help. So I put out like this campus wide outreach and I'm like, hey, I'm trying to do this Mel Initiative thing. Is anybody interested in helping me? I lie to you not, like 15 people email me back within the same day, like, I'll help, I'll help, I'll help. So now I have this big committee of people in all these other departments who are bringing resources, they're bringing funding, they're bringing ideas. And it's just a whole different experience now. Like we have these great events. We even pulled off an overnight high school summit. We invited high school senior males to spend the weekend on campus and they were hosted by students and everything. And like we end up getting 13 of the students to enroll. It made like Lincoln over $300,000 and all this stuff. And mind you, I'm at like the forefront of this. So then at the time, our new vice president wanted it to have an even more established presence on campus, hence where the Office of Mel Achievement came from. And in 2019, we actually won a national award from the American College Personnel Association for Outstanding Men's Program. And let me tell you something. I've only cried hard a few times in my life. I bawled, absolutely bawled, because, the story I just told you of how, like, literally it was me writing a book trying to get a deal with Lincoln that led me to getting connected to the guy who wants to start a Mel initiative who dies 2 months later to us winning a national award for this program. Like, it's like I'm sitting here telling you that. I'm like, I can't even believe how it all just connected the way that it did. But, it's been a blessing and our students really get a lot out of it. And, for that, it definitely lets me know that this is a part of my purpose.
I feel like that was a very powerful story, and it shows a lot too. On I'm not saying you didn't want that before. Maybe you weren't even thinking about it.
At
And
all.
then just going after what you believe, not just anything that you really something you're passionate about, what you believe that you went full heartedly in, and it turned in from one thing to not only getting what you wanted. That's not necessarily the moral of the story, but it turned into something much bigger and better that you might not have even thought of. So
Yeah.
I think that's very powerful. It helped a lot of people. It's helping a lot of people. What I wanted to ask too is, how do you feel like the males, mentorship, brotherhood, having a dad, those male figures, even if it's a little brother, how do you feel like that affects males, young men coming up?
Oh goodness. I think that is extremely important. Representation is really everything in this world. And, just thinking about like my relationship with my dad, much of who I am and what I learned came from him. Same thing for my grandfather, same thing for my older brother. It's important to have mentorship and it's okay to have mentors in different parts of your life that aren't all the same person. Like there might be a guy or even a woman who is really good for you with your finances. And maybe that's who you talk to about your finances. That doesn't have to be the same person who helps you with your relationship or your career. So don't ever be afraid to kind of mix it up there. It would be great if they could cover all the bases, but if not, that's okay too. So as a mentee myself, I recently got a new mentor, and something that I would advise anyone of is definitely set your expectations of what you need from the relationship early on. I'll be honest, I've always been a mentor to somebody, but I myself was a little bit slow on getting a mentor because I know my personality. I can shut down when a person tries to essentially project a lifestyle onto me. So if someone comes to me and says, "You need to do this," I instantly hear I don't need to do anything. Like that's what my mind responds as. And I think there are a lot of people who are the same way. No one likes being told what to do. The purpose of a mentor, you are a guide and a resource, nothing more, nothing less. So a lot of times mentors essentially want to give you the whole plan before they even listen to what you actually want. So when I got my mentor, I had to make it very clear early on that, I need you to help me craft what I want to do, not change what I want to do. Unless obviously I'm doing something that's illegal or immoral or something like that. As a mentor myself, I try to be mindful of that with my mentees. They're so different in terms of their personalities, but also what they want out of life. And, I never try to compare them to the standard. I think the only thing I probably do in a joking manner, I've encouraged all of them to write books only because I am an author. But I'm perfectly fine if they never go on to write books. I still love them for who they are and what they want. But as a mentee and mentor, regardless of what side you fall on, the biggest thing there is just commitment to the relationship. A lot of people have mentors that they don't check in with, and a lot of people have mentees they also don't check in with. So if you're going to be intentional about getting a mentor or being a mentor, make sure that you actually set time aside for the relationship so that it can properly grow and really do what it's supposed to do in your life.
I like that. I think that's good. That was going to be one of my questions, which you answered was, the power of coaching and mentoring. But I like what you said. It's not, I mean, it's one thing to look for, and I think that shows something about a person is that they want a mentor, they need help, they need guidance. That's a step. But it doesn't help you if you're met. What I like what you said is, if they don't have full intention to help what you're looking. So to bring on the table what you need that I don't have or that I'm looking for, and then see if you can do that. And I feel like good people would tell you, I don't think I'll be the person for you. Or, they would tell you, I can do this for you. Let me guide you. Let me help you, So I think that's really good, is to be strategic about who you have as a mentor. As far as, I know you talked about, one of my last questions I have for you is, you're talking about, you encourage people to write books, specifically, your mentees. I'm behind the scenes working on a book, but it's been going on for a long time.
Congratulations. So I'm excited.
I'll definitely send you a draft when it's done to see your opinion.
Yes.
But what would your advice be on? So for me, I always feel like as a hopefully one day a writer, is it better to set a timeline for the book, or is it better to be organic about it? Because I feel like for my book, it's dragging. So we're talking, I would say over a year. And I don't think it's necessarily a lack of, I'm not writer's block or anything. It's just, you have life, you have other things and stuff.
Yeah.
What would you say is the best, strategy for writing a book? Is it to, know what, this is the timeline, this is we're going to get it done, or, it finishes when it finishes?
I think for me, I've found more success when I was very militant about how I went about it. I think when you don't have a deadline, there's no accountability there. So the likeliness of you finishing it anytime soon becomes so much less likely. With my first book, I actually knocked it out in about 9 months, and it could have been sooner. I finished a bulk of it in the summer of 2015. And then after school started back up and, my students got there, that then became the priority, which is why it dragged a little bit into the top of 2016. But for real, if you commit, 30 minutes a day to writing, depending on how much you plan to write, you could really knock it out in a month's time. Something I've been doing, even with trying to get my reading up, is I get up in the morning now and I try to read a chapter, if I can, of whatever it is that I'm reading. And you'll find that it's so much better, especially in today's age, social media. Now we have Clubhouse on top of Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and just GroupMe. All of these notifications always going off, the text, the calls, the other responsibilities that you have. Sometimes it can be very hard to find just some quiet time. And I think that's why other people might struggle with getting a book done. But I think if you're strategic about when you work on it and how much time you're willing to commit and really just get into a routine, you could really knock it out. The tricky part to, doing a book is there are other parts. Like for me, my fourth book is already written. It's currently in editing, but right now I'm struggling on what I want my cover to be. So now I'm in a space where I can't release the book because I don't have a cover yet, right? And so those types of things more so also play a role into why books don't come out, is again that marketing piece, that cover, the synopsis, all the other things that go in a book beyond just the manuscript also have to be worked on too. And most times you're not going to be the graphic designer or the illustrator to do your own book stuff. So now you're depending on someone else's schedule too. So you want to plan for that. If you say, I want my book out, let's say the summertime, you should give your editor at least 1 month to edit your book. and then you have to then correct anything that they've suggested that you edit. So you see how quickly that timeline can get pushed back from what you want, because there are some other factors that extend beyond just you.
I like that. I mean, I got notes in my head right now, but I think that's really good information, because I do believe there's a lot of people, I feel like, that actually do want to write, but they don't know how to, or, they don't, they're kind of laxy daisy with it, which, that's probably me. But I feel like there's a lot of good writers out there, and they just need structure. And that was one reason why we wanted you on here today, is to really give, inspiration to people that want to go up that, that pathway. If they want to write, if they want to, whether it's a book, whether it's a blog, whether it's, whatever it is, whether in school and they're doing essays, sometimes people need inspiration from somebody that came from their background. Sometimes it's hard when, you got, Bill Gates doing an interview, or you got, these people that, they're just so far, nothing against them, but they're just so far that you can't connect with them. And I
Right.
think it's really good to, you see people that are successful, they're doing just as well as people, but you can relate to them. You can relate to what they're doing, and they can give you real advice, So I think you definitely have helped, this, our audience with, being authors, with giving back, with working with the young people, being creative, and just general entrepreneurship. So we really appreciate that in your time. Do you have any final advice for the audience today? I don't know if you have a one go-to tip in life that, you really would like to share.
I do. So something that is important to remember, and I live by this, is that the same day that you plant the seed is not the same day that you eat the fruit. And what that means is that it does get better. You have to stay patient to the process. I'm now 3 books in, getting ready to do my 4th. But again, going back 5 years, 6 years ago when I started, many of the things that I now know to do, I didn't know to do when I started. And it's okay. I grow into it. I've taken bumps as a result of it, but it has made me better. So don't be afraid to start. I'll be honest, sometimes I struggle with that in my life, and every day I work to kind of overcome that. But it won't be perfect the first time you do it. In order for you to have a 100th episode of a show, you have to have a first episode. In order to do anything better, you have to start, and you have to be okay with maybe the start not looking like the clean cut, crisp version you envisioned in your head. Like, that's okay. You'll grow to be that space. Even think about companies like Amazon that started out of their garage, or those companies that started in their basement, right? These multi-billion-dollar industries, had some very humble beginnings. Facebook was started in a college dorm room. So if that's not motivation enough to let you know that things do get better, look around you. Most things that have abundant, earnings now had some very crazy moments. I was on social media the other day, and they said in their first year of production, Coca-Cola only sold 25 cans. Imagine if they had given up because they only sold 25 cans the first year. So for all of my writers out there, your first book may only sell 50 copies. For all of my podcaster, your first episode might get 10 listens. And for your first YouTuber, you might only have 2 subscribers, but it won't always be that way. And my advice to you above all else is plan for the come up. Stop looking at yourself as I'm going to be this small entity forever. One day you're going to be so booked and busy that we're going to have to call you 2 years out just to get on your calendar. Like, that's coming, but you have to work towards that, and you have to believe that that's coming. But all of that starts in the mindset. It's not in the revenue. It's not in, anything that's currently in front of you. It's in the mindset. When you start to see yourself as a big time player, you will then elevate in your productivity, and people will see that, and opportunities will come to you as a result of that. So that is my advice that I want to share.
That's great stuff. Everybody remember that, plant the seed and put in the work. We appreciate it again, John, what you're doing, and spending some of your time with us today. Hopefully, personally, we can connect in the future. And everybody, again, we appreciate you tuning in. Till next time.